Lydia, repeat after me. I do solemnly declare.
I do solemnly declare.
That I know not of any lawful impediment.
That I know not of any lawful impediment.
Why I, Lydia Jane Hibbert.
Why I, Lydia Jane Hibbert.
May not be joined in matrimony.
May not be joined in matrimony.
To Bernard Geoffrey Sigel Delaney.
To Bernard Geoffrey St. John Delaney.
Physical comedy is about telling stories with pictures. Stories about the human experience, which is what makes them timeless and universal. From Chaplin to Keaton to Jerry Lewis. Playing the clown is a difficult skill to master, but if done right, it can become iconic. Which leads us to Rowan Atkinson, one of the most iconic and skilled comedic performers of his generation. Now entering his 6th decade as a performer, he has brought to life some of television's most memorable characters. So let's take a closer look. Atkinson studied electrical engineering and achieved his master's at Oxford. And it's this same methodical and scientific approach he would later adopt in his comedy.
No, I find it difficult to laugh at other things. Very few people and very few situations make me laugh. I sometimes feel some of it is in the back of me where I'm analysing the humour or I'm analysing the joke rather than enjoying it. So somebody tells a very good joke and I go, very funny.
And they stop telling jokes.
And they stop telling jokes, but I'm thinking about, yes, I suppose it is funny. You know what I mean? I'm kind of, it's sort of clocking, it's sort of slowly filtering its way down through the system.
In the 70s, he became friends with longtime collaborator Richard Curtis and performed at the Edinburgh Fringe as part of the Oxford Revue. Here he developed skills in the art of slapstick and physical humor. How there is no wasted motion, and how stories can be told simply through body language. His breakthrough came as a writer and performer on Not the 9 O'Clock News, a hugely successful sketch show that ran from 1979 to 1982, and Atkinson often stole the show. It allowed him to showcase his range of comedic skills, and from the moment you see his face and hear the words out of his mouth, he has drawn you in.
Tonight, we look at Belgium, and in particular, Belgian eating habits. We have with us the Belgian chargé d'affaires, le comte de Froufrou. Hercule, we've heard that there are some extraordinary social habits connected with eating in your country. Is this true?
They may seem extraordinary to you. But to us, they are, how say you, small potatoes.
This show was an absolute gem, and I have to show you another sketch.
Did they teach you anything at training school?
Oh, sorry, sir.
Some of the... Some of these cases are just plain stupid. Looking at me in a funny way. Is this some kind of joke, Savage?
No, sir.
And we have some more here. Walking on the cracks in the paper. Walking in a loud shirt in a built-up area during the hours of darkness. And walking around with an offensive wife. In short, Savage, in the space of 1 month, you have brought 117 ridiculous, trumped-up and ludicrous charges.
Yes, sir.
Against the same man.
Yes, sir.
A Mr. Winston Kodogo of 55 Mercer Road.
Yes, sir.
Sit down, Savage.
Yes, sir.
Savage, why do you keep arresting this man?
He's a villain, sir.
A villain.
And a jailbird, sir.
I know he's a jailbird, Savage. He's down in the cells now. were holding him on a charge of possession of curly black hair and thick lips.
Atkinson was at the forefront of the alternative comedy scene in Britain during the early 80s, popularizing the use of anarchic satire. It was also during this time he produced some memorable performances at the Secret Policeman's Ball, a series of benefit shows where Atkinson got the chance to learn from and perform alongside his heroes, such as John Cleese.
Good evening. Tonight, we're taking a look at beekeeping. And here to tell us all about it, we have in the studio a man who's been keeping bees for over 40 years, Mr. Reginald Prawnbaum. Good evening, Mr. Prawnbaum.
Good evening.
Tell me, what first interested you in the bee world, Mr. Prawnbaum?
Well, even as a child, I used to... Shh. I'm sorry, shouldn't I have said that?
No, of course you should. Pay no attention, please. When I say shh, it's just a nervous mannerism I picked up. If I want you to keep quiet, I will say shush. You were saying?
Even as a child, I used to wander around.
Shh.
At this point, he was arguably Britain's brightest new comedy talent, and in 1983 he was rewarded with a lead role in his very own sitcom, introducing the world to a truly iconic character.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm anaspeptic, phrasmotic, even compunctious to have caused you such pericombobulation.
Blackadder. Voted by the British public as the third greatest sitcom character of all time. Atkinson initially played him as a bumbling idiot in the first series, but as a lead character this wasn't quite working. So, from the second season onward, the character did a complete 180 and became a dastardly, selfish underachiever. As the man explains, it's all about attitude.
The wit of the comedian often lies in simply inventing new variations of old jokes. He can do this because the success of any comic idea depends not just on the skill with which it is executed, but more importantly, on the attitude with which it is performed. New attitude, new joke.
Unbeknownst to many, Atkinson actually has a stammer, and in order to control his speech he tends to pause before certain words and sounds. Turns out, this was a blessing in disguise, as it makes his dialogue just that much funnier.
Anybody else would read it and go, right, they're called Bob. You decided that Bob could be a funny word.
Right.
Now, how do you do that?
Well, it just seemed, it was always at the end of the sentence. It was, so how can I help you, Bob? And it just seemed like a funny way of saying it, Bob.
Blackadder proved to audiences that Atkinson can indeed be a leading man. He can do verbal as well as physical comedy. For his next move, Atkinson decided to get back to his physical comedy roots and created his second iconic character. The longevity and mass appeal of Mr. Bean is extraordinary. Atkinson describes him as a 9-year-old in the body of a man. Innocent yet unpleasant. He doesn't need jokes, his actions serve as the punchline. Again, it's all about attitude.
However, if Kevin approaches the same situation of man and hosepipe with different kinds of comic attitude, we should see how it can be brought to life in different ways by introducing character into the comedy. Number 1, the dim attitude, the comedy of stupidity. The crucial element in the character of the comedian is his lack of awareness. He knows less than the audience about what is going on. Number 2, the aggressive attitude. The crucial element in the character is his lack of consideration for others. Number 3, the crude attitude, the comedy of vulgarity.
Mr. Bean was deliberately made with the international market in mind. Atkinson thought about how musicians make universal songs that work in different countries, so why not do the same with comedy? The scenarios are simple. The dialogue is minimal. No politics and nothing sexual. The humor can equally be enjoyed by a teenage girl living in New York or an 80-year-old man living in Cairo. Slapstick humor always works. He may make it look easy, but each gesture, each moment, is carefully rehearsed. This wasn't some clown improvising his way through a scene. This was a mechanically minded scientist at work.
Whether he's working in slapstick, surrealism, or parody, or some combination of the three, the comedian's success depends first and foremost on his ability to create a funny character. As Charlie Chaplin once said, in comedy, nothing transcends character. And for the physical comedian, this means his ability to communicate through his body language.
What all of Atkinson's characters have in common is their attitude. Within one facial expression, one slight gesture, we can sense what they are all about. It's not what they do, but how they do it.
This is the comedy of personality, rather than the comedy of gags. It's not about doing funny things. It's about doing something quite normal in a funny way.
Atkinson has been gifted with a so-called rubber face, where he is able to contort his face in a variety of different ways and garner a laugh, barely having to say a word. For reference, Jim Carrey also has this. Atkinson says his greatest influences are John Cleese, Charlie Chaplin, and Jacques Tati. And what they all have in common is that they all created personas that are unprepared and incapable of handling whatever comes their way. And the same can be said of all of Atkinson's characters. They're unprepared and incapable. They find humor in the human experience. And that's what makes it timeless.
Hollywood is a very, very difficult place to be, as I'm sure you know, particularly for a foreign artist. I mean, foreign to America, i.e. all of us. It is a very difficult place to act because they've got their own agenda and their own way of making films and their own ideas about how you should be packaged and what you can do. And something I suppose I've grown to believe in over the years is in my own instinct, and I think I know best what I can do. I'm very difficult to fit in to the Hollywood jigsaw.
Yeah.